Every Canadian investor eventually faces this question. Do you build your portfolio around Canada's stock market, with its banks, energy, telecoms, and dividend-heavy companies? Or do you lean into the US market, with tech giants, global leaders, and the S&P 500? This is a showdown between XIC and VFE. XIC is the ETF that gives you exposure to almost the entire Canadian market, while VFE is the ETF that tracks the US S&P 500 index. It sounds very simple, but the choice defines your portfolio's performance, future, and volatility. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly whether Canada or the US deserves to be the backbone of your investing strategy. And this is why this decision matters. You're here because you want a simple, long-term ETF strategy. You don't want to pick individual stocks. Instead, you want one fund that captures the growth of an entire market. And this is where these two ETFs come in. XIC, the iShares Core S&P 500 TSX Capped Composite Index ETF, represents Canada. VFV, the Vanguard S&P 500 Index ETF, represents the US. Both are very cheap, both are diversified, and both are designed for buying and holding. But they represent two very different economies. Canada is resource-heavy, dividend-rich, and dominated by banks and energy. The US is obviously tech-driven, innovation-focused, and home to a lot of global leaders. Choosing between them isn't just about numbers. It's about deciding which economy you want to ride for decades. First, let's look into XIC. So XIC tracks the S&P 500/TSX Capped Composite Index, representing about 95% of the Canadian equity market. Inside XIC, you'll find the pillars of Canada's financial system, which are banks like RBC, TD, Scotia, BMO, and CIBC. You'll also see energy giants like Enbridge, Suncor, and Canadian Natural Resources, telecom leaders like Bell, TELUS, and Rogers, other utilities such as CN Rail, Fortis, and Brookfield, and yes, there is even consumer and tech exposure through companies like Spotify, Loblaws, and Magna. In total, XIC holds more than 200 companies, giving you a pretty broad Canadian exposure. Think of XIC as your Canada's anchor. Very steady, dividend-heavy, and resource-driven. Okay, what about VFE? Well, VFE tracks the S&P 500, the most famous index in the world. Inside VFE, you'll find tech giants like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Meta. You'll see big consumer leaders such as Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, and McDonald's. Financial powerhouses like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Visa are there as well. On top of that, we have healthcare innovators like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and United Health. The S&P 500 represents 500 of the largest US companies, many of which dominate not just in the US, but really globally. Think of VFE as your growth rocket. It's innovation-driven, globally competitive, and historically one of the strongest performing indexes out there. So let's look at one example. Let's imagine a hypothetical situation. Let's say Sarah invests everything in XIC and Daniel invests in VFE. Over the next decade, Sarah enjoys steady dividends, stability from Canada's banks, and resilience during energy booms. Daniel rides the explosive growth of the US tech, which is absolutely amazing, but also faces much sharper volatility when the sector cools. Again, both strategies work, but they feel very different. Sarah's portfolio is steady and income-focused. Daniel's portfolio is growth-heavy and innovation-driven. Who's gonna win? For that, we'll need a time machine. But let's look at the numbers now. Here is the reality. XIC has historically delivered lower returns compared to the US. But it offers higher dividend yield. It's concentrated in banks and energy, which makes it more stable, but less innovative. VFE, on the other hand, has historically delivered higher returns, especially thanks to tech. It offers lower dividend yields, but it's more diversified across sectors and gives you greater exposure to global leaders. All right, what about the fees? Let's take a look. In my opinion, both ETFs are very low cost. XIC charges you 0.06%, and VFE around 0.08%. The difference is incredibly negligible. Your choice should be based on market exposure and not fees, at least in this specific case. So, who should choose XIC? I would say XIC is best for investors who want broad Canadian exposure in one ETF, as well as those who value dividends and stability, and investors who believe in Canada's banks and energy sectors, hoping they outperform the market, as well as those who want a low-cost holding for RRSP and TFSA, something that feels steady and familiar. What about VFE? VFE is for investors who believe the US will continue to dominate global markets, as well as those who want exposure to the world's biggest companies, those who value growth and innovation over dividends, and those who don't mind slightly higher volatility short-term for higher long-term rewards. It's also perfect for people who want a simple, very liquid ETF with global recognition. To summarize, XIC and VFV are both absolutely excellent long-term ETF solutions. XIC gives you Canada's stability, dividends, and resource-driven economy. VFV gives you American growth, innovation, and global dominance. In some industries, anyways. There is no wrong choice. Only the wrong choice for you personally and your goals, as well as your risk tolerance. If you want stability and dividends, choose XIC. And if you want growth and innovation, choose VFE. If you want to hold both, I would say you should hold both and let Canada and the US work together in your portfolio. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, you're already ahead of so many investors who never take time to understand their own strategy. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel. It tells YouTube that people actually watch the videos on my channel once in a blue moon. And honestly, that's all I hope for, and it means the world. As always, this video is not financial advice. I'm here to give you information and my personal opinion potentially, but not tell you what to buy. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.